Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to Compact Claustrophobia. So since the last episode, it has been a little bit of time. I've been working on a few things. First up, I did build a reactor in a test world, because if you recall, there's a quest here, Baby's First Fission Reactor. We're going to be working on this today, but we're not going to be building this reactor that they're suggesting, because this is total garbage. It's a terrible reactor. It's not really worth wasting our time on, in my opinion. But I built a reactor in my test world and did some kind of playing around, fine-tuning to get it kind of where I wanted it to be. As far as power production, I like to keep the heat on the negative side so we don't have to worry about toggling it on and off, at least for base reactors, because we want this one running non-stop for both power but also for byproducts that we're going to get, and kind of start our byproduct line for Nuclearcraft. I don't know how much we're going to need of the Nuclearcraft byproducts for this pack necessarily. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's really just for power generation in this pack, or if it's used a bit further. But we're going to be pushing into this today. Once we get this out of the way, our next stop will be getting our wood automation up and going, and then we'll push on into probably refined storage after that, because it's going to rely on having our wood automation. After that, then we'll start pushing into some of this stuff here, like glowstone and bigger rooms and stuff, and then this big multi-block. We're actually, I'm not going to say we're close to the end of the pack, but we're getting there. Just a lot of big projects that we have coming up. But I have let this system run for a while. I did turn this up to 3, and I upgraded our furnace a bit with a couple augments here, just to increase its processing speed, to kind of match the speed of things coming in at 1 click every 25 ticks. So it's been running perfectly at that speed with 2 of those running. So I've had that running for a bit. Also the steel creation, I've had this running for a bit. We have a little over 1,000 steel. We're going to eat through a ton of materials this episode. I have not prepped much of anything. I did prep a large compact machine, and I also made one here. We'll take a quick look at that in just a moment. But I didn't prep it because I wanted to kind of go over how many materials we're actually going to be using this episode. It's going to be ridiculous. So inside of this machine, this large compact machine here, I've got just kind of a wood setup going, and this is for dark oak. I've kind of switched over from using oak to using dark oak. I can actually grow 5 trees in here at once, and as you can see, I've got a lot of dark oak built up, and then I can just, hold shift and just vein mine this out and clear out the entire area all in one go. It makes gathering wood a whole lot more bearable. But then as far as the way I'm placing my trees, I'm placing them out kind of just like this. And they're pretty compacted into here, but it is working out, so yeah, we'll do something like that. And then I can just shift, and I'll show you one small trick. I don't have any more on me. I'll have to go make one. But one small trick for dealing with like dark oak, because I tend to get really unlucky with dark oak and not get nearly as many saplings as what I'm using. But I will show you something very useful for that. And what I've been doing is just making iron crooks. And then if we pop back in, we can use these to kind of boost our saplings a little bit, boost our amount of saplings, because I think generally we're not going to get nearly as many saplings just letting them decay. So I have been doing this to kind of boost the amount of saplings. And dark oak has been great for wood, getting lots of wood. But yeah, that's what I've been doing for wood, because we're going to be using a lot of wood today. But what we're going to be doing today is starting into reactors. And the reason I didn't prep everything is because, like I said, it's going to take a ton of materials. And I kind of want to do a little bit of the prep, just kind of cut and come back every so often. I wanted to do that on camera and kind of go over the materials that we're going to be using as we go. Now this large compact machine is where we're going to be setting up our reactor, and we're going to be building it just in here for right now. and then we will move it once we get the reactor built. But we're going to be going with this room because it is a 5x5 interior space, a 5x5x7 interior, and so that would be a 7x7x9 or 7x9x7 exterior space. So it's going to take up the majority of this room, and I'm going to go ahead and just set my entry point here. And the very first thing that we're going to be prepping up is I need 100 and they give us a door and a reactor port from the quest. So we're going to be going with 152 reactor casings. Now if we take a look at these, they're not overly expensive, but they are going to require tough alloy. That's going to be ferroboron and lithium. I'm going to need steel and boron. I'm going to start running just a lot of this. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just whip up a couple hoppers here. We're going to put the alloy furnace in here instead. We're going to put a hopper feeding into it and a hopper just sitting underneath it. And we're going to say, we'll throw back in the steel and the boron, get that running. Throw those back in there. And then we can throw in the boron and the steel into here. And that way it just kind of keeps this running and keeps the ferroboron moving out, because we're going to be eating through a ton of alloys today. So that'll get us going with the tough alloy started. Then we're going to have to make the lithium, and we're going to need a lot of this as we go through our stuff today. And then we're going to need basic plating. We're going to be using a lot of lead, and we're going to be using a lot of graphite. Now what I want to do... actually, probably find it easier. The nuclear furnace. We're going to be making one of these, I think, today. So let me get the stuff for that. We're going to be using that for making our graphite. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to make our nuclear furnace just to kind of help us out today, for stuff like this, for like kind of mass smelting. Let's grab ourselves some uranium, and let's pop in to here. We'll just actually set it up right here. So if we put in our uranium, we throw in some wood, it's going to kick through and make that charcoal for us. So I can kind of keep this running because I'm going to be using a lot of that graphite today. I'm still going to have to pulverize it. One thing I am going to do though is, for right now, I'm going to set up our pulverizer here. I'm going to set it up here. I'm going to go ahead and break off that connection. I don't want it to do anything. And I'm going to set in on manufactory here. This is just going to be very, very temporary, but then we can run the charcoal through the pulverizer. And then, but we're going to do just kind of some very temporary sort of automation here, and that way this can start sending down to the manufactory. We'll throw just a couple speed upgrades to help it out. I don't need a bunch because it's going to be kind of just running in the background sort of thing. And then I'm going to set a chest in here. And that way it'll pull out the graphite for us. So that's going to be kind of automatic. And what I might do actually is... let me just turn that. And then we could do an item duct here with a servo that does charcoal, whitelist, ignore, and tell this that it's going to input items from that side. So then if we throw in charcoal, that's going to get pulled out and fed up to the pulverizer, and then it gets just recycled back around. Just a temporary thing. We're not going to keep this like long term, but right now I need this to be a little bit more hands-off because I need, like I said, just a massive amount of these materials for this. This is going to be a very big setup. Okay, so now that all of our initial stuff is out of the way, back over to our reactor casings. I'm going to grab what graphite we do have at the moment, and I'm going to make up, there's 58 basic plating, and then our fission reactor casings, there's 16. Okay, that's our very first ones. But these should be pretty quick in all actuality. Now, in addition, I am also going to want 35 transparent fission reactor casings. These are built the same way, but they do require some glass, is the only difference. So I'm going to get these together, 35 of the glass and 152 reactor casings. It'll be a little bit more than that because these do craft 4 at a time. But then I will be back once I get this stuff crafted up. Okay, we should have all the materials now that we need to finish this out. 12, yeah. It's a little bit more than what I need, but let's see. Let's grab 35 of that. There's our 35 transparent fission reactor casings. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and set these up to get them out of our inventory and get our reactor kind of coming together bit by bit. So what we're going to do, we're going to come through 5 like that, and then we're going to come out like that, and we're going to build this out like so, and then we're going to put one there, we're going to put one there, and that's got a couple parts of the quest completed there, and we're going to take these up to there, not all the way up. It's important within Nuclearcraft, if you haven't played with Nuclearcraft before, I know I did a tutorial about it a long time ago, but a lot of things have changed, and then I've covered it a little bit in like Enigmatica and stuff, but let's see, we're going to do one comes out there, but if you haven't played around with it, you don't fill in the edges with Nuclearcraft. Okay, we're going to build that up. We're going to go ahead, build this out, and actually right here, I'm going to leave this open like 2 blocks there, because we're going to put a door in right there. And we're going to go ahead and come up. Now we're going to put the ceiling on at this point. So we'll just put this on. And once again, don't fill in the edges. Leave those open all the way around here. There we go. Alright, so that's our reactor. And then we're going to have the transparent blocks. I'm just going to come up here just to make it a little bit easier for us. We're going to have the transparent blocks setting out across. And I'll have to jump for this last one, but that's okay. There we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring these down a little bit. Not all the way down, because we're going to have to be coming and going from this a little bit. We're going to bring them down just like that. I guess really with the door, we could go ahead and just bring these all the way down, I suppose. So there we go. That's kind of what our reactor is going to look like. Of course, we need all the guts in here. Let's see. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make our sails. These right here, reactor cells, they just take glass and they take tough alloy. Okay, well, I've still got a bunch of tough alloy being made. Let me pop out, see where we're at on that. Really getting these materials set up to be kind of automatic just makes our lives so much easier, because that's the majority of what we're going to be using today is those materials. So I'll have to bring some more over here before too long. And let me get this going. We're still far from done with our charcoal. So we want to make sure and keep that running, because we are going to need a fair amount of it here shortly. Let me grab that out. And actually some of this I need to go ahead and smelt to make graphite ingots. But let me just pop through, get this ran real quick. Basically need a little over 2 stacks of tough alloy, a little over 2 stacks of glass for our sails. We need a bit of them. Each sail that you have, of course, is going to increase the amount of power that's generated, but also the amount of heat that's generated and the amount of fuel that's consumed and stuff. We're going to be running a decent efficiency. I wasn't that concerned about efficiency within this pack because, of course, uranium is infinite. If we give it wood, we're going to have uranium. So I wasn't too concerned about efficiency overall. We're running kind of a pretty decent, I think, reactor for what we're going to be doing. The main thing is it'll be producing us some pretty nice power. Not the craziest power by any stretch of the imagination, but it's going to be pretty solid for us. So, all right, so let's go ahead. There's 34 cells, and then I just need a little bit more tough alloy. It should already be done. It is, and we'll go ahead and get one more cell. Okay, so now that part's done. See, it's not too bad. It's gonna, like I said, it's gonna take a ton of materials, but once we have tough alloy just kind of, not really automated, have it set up so that it can run pretty quick, it's honestly not too bad. Alright, so we're going to run one string of reactor cells just straight down right there. So then we're going to have reactor cells. Now if you have Enderium coolers, they're really nice to put on like these little corners, like there, up there. I'm not going to worry about them. We don't really need them for this reactor, but if you want some really easy cooling. The thing is with Nuclearcraft, when it came to testing out reactors and stuff, I'm not used to not having diamonds, glowstone, emeralds. We can push for emeralds right now, but it's a little bit of a push. Not super tough, but we would need a lot of emeralds probably for what I'd want to do. So a lot of the materials that we would normally have, we don't have access to, like in ready supply. So everything is kind of a push for it. So, but that's how we're going to be setting up our cells, just like that. Okay, so now that that's done, the next thing that we need to do, this part is going to be not so much fun, possibly. We're going to go ahead and run a bit of this graphite through. So this is why I wanted a nuclear furnace right now, because we're gonna use and abuse this nuclear furnace, and then I'm probably going to use it for crafting the fission controller at the end, maybe. Thing is, this thing is super useful, as you can tell, for like manual type stuff like this. Can be useful for automatic stuff too, but generally I don't think speed, like super speed, is too important. Our redstone furnaces do pretty good for like automated systems, I think, but for something like this, it's quite handy. All right, and we're going to keep running. This isn't going to be enough wood. I can already tell you. I don't think it's going to be. What we need to do, we need to take this graphite and we need to make graphite blocks. These right here, and I'm going to want a total of. Oh, I messed up my math here. For some reason I wrote down 35. Like I've got a WordPad open here that I had wrote down my material costs in. And I wrote down 35 graphite. I don't need 35 graphite. I just need 28 graphite. I don't know where I got 35. I think I was looking at 35 sales, and for some reason was like, yeah, I just need 35 graphite too. But that's not the case. What we're going to do is we're going to run this graphite straight down on this middle reactor cell. Now you can hold shift here and see what this does. Basically, it just makes fuel ran through this a little bit more efficient. Now, we don't necessarily, if you're not worried about efficiency, you don't necessarily have to use this. It cuts down on your heat not to have it, and you could run more cells and stuff if you cut out the graphite block. So you could do that. I'm going to add the graphite blocks just for a little boost of efficiency. Plus, I like the way, when I was messing with this, I like the way it builds out. Personally, I think it just works rather well as far as the layout goes. To have this graphite here, but you don't necessarily have to have it if you want to make some adjustments elsewhere. It would make cooling cheaper, but the thing about Nuclearcraft, I find it's really fun to just kind of play around with. I like IC2's reactors, but you generally, at least me, I generally just go online and find a reactor design. You know, there's only so much you can do with them. Nuclearcraft, there is a lot of flexibility and freedom based on your materials and the size and different things. Whereas IC2 is pretty much, you know, it's always the same layout, and it's just putting components in. I love Nuclearcraft's design. And then, of course, there is the big reactors, but they're pretty much just plug and play. There's no downsides. These can explode. If the heat goes up too high, they can explode. So you want to balance cooling and stuff with these, which we'll talk a little bit more about that once we get it all set up. So I'm going to need a bit more graphite. So I'm going to keep running this through. Tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and get another nuclear furnace. We're going to need it this episode anyways. And so just to make the smelting process a little bit faster, I'm going to go ahead and just grab another one. I messed up my math in a couple, I don't know. I did the math like shortly after I woke up, but I was looking through the other materials and it's like, I was like, no, this can't be right. Doesn't even make any sense. So yeah, I think I lost my mind when I was doing the math. But we will still need more graphite this episode, so I'm going to keep it running. But there we go. There's our graphite block. So just right through here, just all the way down, we're going to put in that graphite. Okay, now at this point, we need to start getting into coolers. And I think that, well, we need the fission controller also. We'll probably get that crafted up here shortly. But we are going to need to make coolers. But we're going to need 28 magnesium coolers. We're going to need 28 quartz coolers. And then we're going to need 56 lapis coolers. Okay. Now, the way this is going to work, to make these, they're all pretty straightforward. You can see we take lapis blocks with an empty cooler. We're going to take magnesium with an empty cooler. And we're going to take crushed quartz and quartz blocks with another empty cooler. So altogether, we're going to need 102 empty coolers. These are just steel and more of that tough alloy. It is going to make 2 at a time, but this is a little bit costly, but this is really the last big thing. I mean, it's going to take a lot of magnesium and stuff to actually make them into the coolers, but I think I've probably got enough of that stuff lying around at this point. And then after that, it's really just getting the fission controller done, and we are golden. This actually was not as bad as I was anticipating, to be perfectly honest. Like, I thought this was going to be way worse. Okay, so let's get our first. There's 92. Wow, that's almost all of it that we need. So much cheaper than I was expecting. How much? Oh yeah, that's still running a bunch of stuff here. Let me top that off. We can always use more tough alloy, so I don't mind this making a bit extra, to be honest. And there's the last tough alloy that we need. So there's our 102 empty coolers. That was not bad. Alright, so what we're going to do then is pop over to here. Let's start off with the magnesium. So we need a total of 28 magnesium coolers. So there's 16. And there is 28. Awesome. And then we need our, I'm just going to do it like this. We'll get our lapis blocks, and we need 56. And let me make sure our quest has detected it. 56 of the lapis coolers. So there is 32. Oh, I did 102. Not, oh my gosh. I was like, wait, I'm going to be 10 short, but I counted 102 and not 112. I didn't carry the one. Ugh. I'm actually really good at math, I promise. I'm just losing my mind. It's been a busy week, so that's my excuse. Let me get just a bit more lapis here, and we'll go ahead and toss that down. There's our 56 lapis coolers. I'm just going to go ahead and deposit that back. Let me go get some of that tough alloy. It should be done up by now. There's 40. And I need 10 more. Alright. I like having all these automatic materials because this would have been terrible otherwise. Like, absolutely terrible. Alright, let me get 56 of those. And let's see, for the nether quartz coolers. Okay, it's like that. Okay, and we're going to get 2 stacks and 40 nether quartz. And we have to go crush this up. Let me just Set that to high redstone signal. I'm going to add nether quartz into this. That way it can pump it up and start pulverizing that for us. I think, can't we make the crushed quartz to the manufactory? We can. So I'll take a stack of it then and throw it in the manufactory as well. And then while that's running, let's go ahead, let's pop over. We do have the lapis coolers and we have the magnesium coolers, so we can go ahead and start putting some of this stuff in. So the way it's going to work, if you take a look here, magnesium coolers, you have different cooling rates, and that's how much heat per tick they disperse from your reactor. And the quest suggests redstone cooler. I would not honestly... redstone cooler is good if you're going to couple it with something like a gold cooler to kind of boost it by using the water cooler and the redstone cooler. It has times that it's useful, but with the reactor that they describe doing, they say try a redstone cooler. You can. I mean, with this size, it would probably be okay. But honestly, you'd be better off going with something like a magnesium cooler or a lapis cooler. All of them have different requirements. So you can see lapis cooler, it must be adjacent to at least one reactor cell and one reactor casing. Magnesium coolers must be adjacent to at least one reactor casing and one active moderator block. Moderator blocks are things like graphite. If you come in and you type in, like, say, moderator into this, you can see, like, there's graphite, there's beryllium, and there's molten salt reactor moderator housing. And that's going to tell you what's a moderator block. There's not many. And then if you want to see what a cooler is, you can type in cooler. These are the main coolers. There is, like, the active fluid cooler. It's useful, but we're not going to be using it for this setup. And then the quartz cooler must be adjacent to at least one active moderator block is the only requirement for it. Now what we are going to be doing, now honestly, if you have glowstone, I would replace the quartz coolers with glowstone coolers, because where we're going to be using the quartz coolers, we could put glowstone coolers and they would work. But since we don't have glowstone, we're going to be doing quartz instead. And the way we're going to set this up, the way we're going to lay this out, is we're going to have magnesium coolers that set right up next to the graphite blocks. Because remember, their requirement is just being next to a reactor casing and an active moderator block. So that graphite's going to work perfectly for us. So we're just going to run this straight down like so. And I'll fill in the last blocks there at the end. And then we're going to have... let's see. Is my quartz done by chance? Or kind of, sort of done or something? Okay, yeah, a bit of it is. So we're going to go ahead and get a few of our quartz coolers here. So there's 16. That'll get us started anyways. And we'll just pop back in. Our quartz coolers are going to be setting right up against these double graphite blocks. And we may, long term, we may change them out for glowstone. Probably not. Because for our base reactor, I'm not too worried about upgrading it. It already runs really negative on heat. So there's not a whole lot of point in making it better on performance, in my opinion. So we're going to be waiting for the rest of our quartz coolers to get done. Our lapis coolers, remember that they just require being next to a reactor cell and a reactor casing. And these are going to be butted up right up against these reactor cells in the corners. And bring that down. Probably all we're going to get done this episode is get our reactor built. But I decided to cover this bit by bit as we progress and do it kind of on camera and even do the prep on camera. Because like I said, it is a lot of materials and I tend to get a ton of questions whenever I cover anything related to Nuclearcraft. I tend to get a ton of questions. So I find that it's probably better that I just cover it kind of a little bit in depth as we set this up, because this is one of those things, if you get it wrong, it explodes. So ideally, you don't want to get it wrong when you're setting this up. So, all right, so we're going to bring that down. And now we can kind of just start filling this in. So I'm going to start here in the back and then just come through. This is going to be a completely filled reactor. Now, you can have as much open space in these as you want. So you could go so far as to, have it open so you can come inside. You can hang out inside of it, while it's running. it's no biggie, but we're going to be completely filling it out. I like to make use of the space that we have, so you know, spaces that I wasn't really using for anything else, I put efficiency in there, and I tried to just cram pack this thing full of you know, stuff to generate extra power and do cooling and stuff. Now you can make these things a lot larger, but I think this is pretty good in this pack for us for a first reactor, because it's definitely not, with all of our automatic materials set up, it's definitely not a strain on us to set this up, in my opinion. And it's actually a fairly good amount of power for us. I may end up setting up a second one, though. We'll see. We'll see how things go. But there is our very last quartz cooler. And we're going to go ahead and just pop this guy in and then fill out this. Now at this point, we can put a door in here. Honestly, since we don't really, I was going to put a door there, but it feels kind of dumb to do that. So I'm actually just going to put in our reactor casings there and just fill that in. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to make the fission controller. This guy right here. And to do that, we're going to need a couple nuclear furnaces. That's fine. You know, we've been making those this episode. Machine chassis, which I think we've got everything on us to do that. But then we're going to need advanced plating, which is tough alloy and basic plating. I actually think I've got that. And we're going to need magnesium diboride solenoids, which are magnesium diboride alloy along with tough alloy. And we're going to need 2 of those. Now this stuff is made in the alloy furnace with just magnesium and boron per 3. So there is our 2 magnesium diboride, and I think we've got everything. And I'm just going to go grab, I'll probably make a couple more of these because like I said, I do think I'm probably going to end up setting up another reactor. Honestly, maybe even 2 or 3, we'll see. Because they are not super intensive on uranium, and they're not really all that expensive at this point, because as you saw, it really wasn't that bad. It was just I had to farm dark oak was really all I had to do as far as hands-on stuff goes, so it wasn't that bad. And then our fission controller, we can just kind of pop this guy in anywhere we want on the edges, or we could trade out the glass or something like that. We're just going to put it sitting right there. We're only really going to be using this for accessing our reactor. So you can see right now it's negative 12,320 heat per tick. And we're going to go ahead and just, the choice reward, we're going to take, oh, it's a choice. For some reason I always think I'm going to get all these things. But we're just going to take the fission reactor port because we are going to want that. And we're going to put this guy in. I'm actually going to break off, I think right here, we're going to break this off and put in our fission reactor port right there. And that way we can use this spot for pumping in items or pulling out energy instead of just pumping it into the fission controller here. And just if you want a complete list, once again, we ended up using 154 reactor casings. Now, if you use a door on it, it would be 152, but I ended up scrapping the door and we're just doing solid blocks. But we do have the fission reactor port. Also, you could move the fission controller to the wall and bring it down by 1 also. And if you're using more or less glass, you have to adjust your numbers accordingly. But for this one in particular, we are using 154 reactor casings, 35 of the transparent fission reactor casings, and then we have the fission controller. We have 35 cells inside of here. We have 28 graphite blocks. We have 28 magnesium coolers. We have 28 quartz coolers. And then we have 56 lapis coolers. So if you want just kind of a finalized shopping list, if you want to build this one, then that's what you are going to need to build this complete reactor. Okay, now we're going to really quickly get ourselves some fuel. We're going to be going, this reactor, what I tested it with was the LEU 235. I also tested it with 238. In both cases, it runs at a negative heat. I didn't really test beyond that. Usually, if you're doing different fuels, I tend to like more specialized reactors for different fuels based on if you want efficiency or you just want to run them down for byproducts. But I don't know how much we're going to get into that within this series or within this pack. But what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and make just a little bit of fuel today just so you can see it run, and then next episode we'll automate that whole process. So we're going to need to make ourselves an isotope separator. This should be pretty cheap. Okay, so there's our isotope separator. And bare minimum, we are going to need to run 9 uranium ingots to make 1 piece of fuel. Now, when you're looking at something worth mentioning, when you're looking at your fuel, like so, for example, we take a look at the 235. Now, there is the oxide fuel, which we may get into a little bit later, but right now we're just going to be going with the base 235. It's a little bit more power for the oxide versions, but it's whatever. But when you're looking at the base process time, you're going to say, like this one says 60 minutes. And I think tends to be a lot of confusion with that. Because whenever you throw it in, for example, in here, it's only like 2 minutes, and this one has 307.6% efficiency. So in theory, it should be 3 hours of burn time. But you have to bear in mind that that is across all your cells. So for each cell, it's going to run that down faster. So if you only have 1 cell in here and you had 300% efficiency, then yeah, you'd have like 3 hours of burn time. But we have 35 cells, so it's going to be split across those 35 cells whenever it's running. So just kind of bear that in mind. But what we're going to do, let's pop over. We're just going to plug this up to a power system. Like I said, we are, well, I guess I'm not going to do it here. But like I said, we are going to, next episode, we're going to automate that whole process of making this. But today, I just want to make an example set of fuel. So if we throw in 9 uranium, this is the bare minimum that we're going to need to actually be able to make something. And you're going to see that the isotope separator is taking that uranium and it's breaking it down into uranium-238, and it's breaking it down into tiny clumps of uranium-235. So we're going to grab that out, and what we're going to do is we're going to take these tiny clumps of uranium-235, turn that into a solid piece of uranium-235, and then we're going to take this stuff and it's going to be and then we'll be able to make our fuel. So let's go ahead, let's grab this. You can see the base process time, the base power, and the base heat generation. All the fuels are different. These are depleted, but all the fuels are different. And we're going to pop over, and what we can do is we can just drop this in, and now you're going to see some stats here. This tells you the fuel that's in here. You can see how much power per tick we're going to generate. So we're generating almost 13,000 per tick with this reactor. And you can see our heat per tick. Now we're running at a negative 2,053. I could definitely push a little bit more power, maybe trade out a cooler for a cell or something like that. Probably a couple cells, maybe 3 or 4 if I had to guess, that we could trade out coolers for. But I like the way that this looks, and I'm not really min-maxing with this. I like the way it looks, and I like the way it's shaped, and it's very easy to build out, for you guys if you want to replicate it. And you can see the fuel remaining, we have about 2 minutes of fuel. So each piece of fuel that we pump into here is going to be about 2 minutes that it can run, and which doesn't sound like a lot, but bear in mind that uranium is free, and we're producing it in mass. And then you can see what our heat generation will be, our net heat gen. Now, if you are running at a positive number, then you need to make sure and set up redstone control for this so that it shuts off whenever the heat gets up so high, or toggles on and off via a timer. In my first playthrough of Enigmatica, I showed how to do that. It's very, very simple. This thing does support redstone, but you are going to want to make sure and manage that, because you have a bar here. If the heat reaches max, then it's going to start melting down and cause a lot of damage, and I believe explode, if I recall, once it reaches max heat. So you definitely want to avoid that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a lever, and we're going to give this some redstone. It does require redstone to run. And right now we're just going to use a lever. We'll probably, next episode, we're going to make it a little bit nicer, I think, because we're going to be automating all of this. And then possibly, if we have time, we might do the tree farm next episode, because the tree farm is going to be quick. But I just want to get all the automation in place for this so that we should have lots of power. And I would like to set up power storage and power transfer across the base. So we'll see where we get to. But now if we hit the lever on, you're going to see that this starts running and building up power. Now that right there, that is 1000 RF. So you can see actually at my Wayla there, you can see that we have 4 million RF in here. So just bear in mind that that is KRF and not just straight RF. Because if that was straight RF, then this would be pitiful power generation. But you can see that we will very, very quickly fill this thing up with power. Because, of course, right now we're not sending it anywhere. And this bar right here is telling us how far into this fuel cell that we are. Now, bear in mind that if this runs out, you're going to see, I mean, if there's nowhere for power to go, it's still going to continue eating that fuel. So ideally, you're going to have that power off whenever the energy stored reaches max. Or I tend to like it at least 50% of max, shut it off, and then wait till we actually need the power. So we are going to be doing some, setting that up as well, so that we're not wasting fuel when it's not really needed. Even though with constant uranium coming in, it wouldn't be a big deal if you kept running it. You'd just be getting more byproducts, really. So depending, you may want to keep it running, even if the power is not going anywhere. There's no downside to doing that. It's not going to cause extra heat or anything like that. It's just not, it's just going to be burning it and not doing anything with it. So, but anyways, I know it's about wrapping up point for this episode, so we're going to end this one out here. Next episode, whenever we come back, we are going to automate kind of creating fuel, running the reactor, give it some redstone control, and start getting into power transfer, and then maybe get into the tree farm. I'm doubtful of that, but we'll see how things go and see how the episode progresses. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already to stay updated with when new videos come out. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, and I hope to see you guys next time. So until then, as always, do take care, stay safe. I'll see you guys then.